This is one fleet evening sync with 2 acts, first status, then management. The status cutoff is August 13th at 8:38 in the evening, Mountain Standard Time. It is not this morning's meter wall and not tomorrow's forecast. 4 provider panels, the active command line pointer, OpenAI, Open Router, queue, GPU, seats, storage, and backup were read separately. Every number keeps its clock, every green keeps its type. When the status act closes, management will decide how tonight's dependencies flow without pretending this snapshot already authorized them.
The Anthropic panels show 4 real hulls and 0 proven account identities. One Max panel has a session at 13%, all models at 22%, and Fable at 15%. OCR wrote 18 for that last value, the image says 15, so the error remains visible and the image wins. The second Max has an unused session, while all models are exhausted and Fable is 93% used. They are positional windows, not subnames, and their percentages must not be averaged into Anthropic is fine.
The 2 Pro windows strengthen that caution. One visibly shows all model usage at 0, but its session row is outside the captured scroll position. Duplicated OCR zeros are rejected. The other shows an unused session and 38% weekly use. Separately, the active CLI pointer is sub-E at 14% 5-hour and 22% weekly. That pointer is not joined to any browser panel. OpenAI is 15% weekly used. Open Router has bounded purchase credit. These are separate reservoirs with separate clocks, not a blended fuel gauge.
And headroom is not presence. A low meter says a route may have room. It does not say a seat has heard this context, owns eligible work, or can carry it intact to Curtis. The encouraging truth is plural. Several bounded reservoirs exist rather than one collapsing line. The limiting truth is also plural. One Max weekly axis is exhausted, another Fable axis is nearly exhausted, and identity joins are missing. Resource availability becomes capacity only when it meets compatible work, an owner, and a recipient.
The work instruments expose that missing join. At 8:37, the queue sampler reported 118 items and dispatch false. It proves a sampled backlog, not 118 eligible jobs. In the same minute, the GPU showed roughly half its memory resident and active utilization, with local model, hub, and OmniVoice processes, but no live lease. The sensor called the minute render because OmniVoice was present above threshold. It did not name an artifact. Queue depth is not eligibility, and GPU activity is not ownership.
Seat state is narrower and cleaner. 7 registered windows resolve live and 0 resolve dead. Fable triggered an unchanged title alert, then its own session produced the wrap-up board and share shortlist within 2 minutes. That clears the productive liveness concern raised by the alert while leaving title freshness separate. A window, heartbeat, node, quota, and delivered artifact are different objects. Tonight's seat map proves reachable surfaces and recent activity, not continuous useful work.
Storage also has types. Root has about 169 GB available at 91% used. Slow drive has roughly 2.8 terabytes available and remains nearly empty. The NAS is a real CIFS mount with about 17.7 terabytes available. The exact file that failed midnight verification now matches source to NAS by size and SHA-256. That clears one mismatch. It does not enroll slow drive, verify the whole backup, exercise restore, prove immutability, or license pruning.
Output state needs only the same discipline. The latest paper crossing successor reached internal plex before cutoff, and the evening training, bloom, and fleet lanes have bounded owners. Public upload remains held. Arrival does not prove hearing. Hearing does not prove value. Value does not imply publication. The fleet is producing, but it cannot manufacture the recipient clock while Curtis is done for the night. That is not a gap to fill with simulated approval.
So the status disposition is compact. Provider room max weekly access is closed. The sampled queue is high and unjoined to eligibility. The GPU is active without a named lease. Storage has room, 1 known backup mismatch converged, and recovery gates remain open. 7 windows are live, 3 evening meetings are owned, public release is held. Nothing here supports a universal scarcity story, and nothing here authorizes indiscriminate dispatch.
That is the handoff from status to management. The missing data structure is the edge from eligible work to owner to actuator to recipient. Management should build those edges, not add more percentages. Each overnight thread needs an input, owner, next consumer, rollback condition, and completion receipt. If any field is missing, the thread is unowned or carried forward, not silently running, not globally blocked, and not somebody else's implied obligation.
The reseated board already supplies the first edges. Training and Bloom are claimed by the parent sole authoring lane. Fleet is claimed here. The Clarkson lane retains serial render and plex delivery. Harmony's Fable seat holds pipeline depth monitoring, the public shortlist, and the GitHub sweep fallback. Queue eligibility, whole backup verification, storage pruning, GPU training, and public release gain no owner from this conversation. Naming the unknown surfaces is part of management, not a failure to manage.
The dependency graph is simple enough to live. Each author freezes sources, writes one room, falsifies it, and hands an exact hash to the renderer. The renderer revalidates, encodes one artifact through the single voice path, falsifies media, copies once into a free plex slot, and refetches. Authoring can overlap. The media mouth stays serial. Each arrived room stops at recipient outcome open. Parallel work feeds a next consumer. It does not multiply mouths or duplicate authorship.
Space. Resource scheduling follows the graph rather than the meters. Sol already carries bounded authoring. Fable should continue its claimed monitoring and curation rather than be duplicated by an unlabeled fallback. OpenRouter is paid fallback only for compatible claimed work. The local GPU first serves the already authorized report renders through one lease space. A training canary, if separately cleared, needs a disk envelope, peak memory estimate, abort conditions, and a named lease. Remaining VRAM is not priority.
The queue remains a read-only join before it becomes dispatch. Inventory must meet eligibility, owner, model compatibility, and actuator state. If 10 cells are eligible, 10 bounded claims can follow. If none are, the count is taxonomy dead. If the actuator is broken, repair that surface. Bulk firing from a depth number would turn headroom into authority and make the fleet busier while leaving the original recipient edge absent.
Storage needs rigor that accelerates rather than delays. Declare the proof plan with the move, source hash, destination, protection parity, copy receipt, byte verification, backup inclusion, and explicit prune decision. Produce those receipts beside the operation. A mismatch blocks only its affected prune edge while authoring and rendering continue. Tonight's one converged file is evidence that the loop can close. Slow drive still remains capacity rather than protection, so no deletion follows.
Local rollback is how the organism keeps moving. Source drift stops one render and preserves its attempt. Provider refusal stages one exact task until identity and compatibility are rechecked. GPU conflict waits for one named lease. Backup mismatch blocks one prune. Missing public authority keeps one artifact internal. Grounding is not a global semaphore. It is a collection of small truth constraints that stop uncertainty from becoming either recklessness or paralysis.
Space. Public work stays on its own clock. The later nominations are 2 paper crossing method artifacts and 3 branch flow artifacts. The next Robin variants stay for tomorrow, and earlier episodes remain under review. A standardized disclosure block is being drafted. None of that means upload tonight. Space. The eventual batch chooses final privacy, metadata, captions, playlist intent, methodology, link, and responsiveness language before the first API touch, then validates with the minimum necessary follow-up.
Dawn is an accounting window, not a freeze. Work continues overnight under bounded claims. Between 6:30 and 7, the morning lane waits to report until it can include most of what actually happened. Completions, failures, carried forward seams, resource changes, and recipient outcomes, if any. It does not pre-write a 3 in the morning future and does not pause the polis. A 7:15 timer may backstop absence, but the primary source is the living overnight record.
Every thread should reach one of 4 dispositions before that accounting window, completed with evidence yielded to a named next owner, carried forward with a named blocker, or explicitly unowned. Still working without a new checkpoint is not a fifth state. The monitor can detect a dam without becoming universal author. Hourly backups can continue while exact content verification remains separate. Renders can continue while public upload stays held. The checks travel with the work instead of becoming a waiting room before it.
The Fleet Evening Sync closes with a modest promise. Curtis can stop being the router. Owners know their inputs and consumers. Blockers remain local. Rollbacks preserve attempts. The one mouth stays singular. Training, Bloom, and Fleet can reach Plex as 3 meetings. Morning will account for the night in the morning. What is unowned stays honestly unowned. What is internal stays internal. And what arrives waits for the only outcome no management system should counterfeit: being heard.